Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today I'll be making a fairy baby out of polymer clay. So I'm going to start off by washing my hands and also the inside of the mould. This will get any excess dust off of it and it won't then transfer into the clay. So once we're all cleaned up we can get started. So first of all we have some Fimo polymer clay. Polymer clay is kind of like plasticine in a way, but it can be baked, and when it's stored you don't actually need to store it in like an airtight container, as it never really dries out. It sort of just gets a little bit harder over time. So here I am showing you that it's just a little bit too hard, and I'm just working it and making it a bit softer so it can fit into the mold better. I just rolling it in my hands, warming it up a bit, and then making it into like a cone shape. This is going to make it easier for me to fit it inside the mold. So if I just sort of fit it all in as a big lump, it wouldn't really make a great impression into the mold and it would probably break it. So you sort of have to think about the way that you do put it in the mold. And again, just making the exact same shape, and hopefully this time it will fill the mold. So we've got our second cone shape, which we're going to be putting inside the mold and filling it out so it goes flat. This does take a little bit of work because you've also got to try and connect it with the layer underneath. And here we go. Here's the clay baby inside the mold. I should make a tally of how many times I say mold in this video. It's a lot. Anyway, next we are going to be making the outfit for the baby. So we have this beautiful lavender polymer clay, and I'm just going to be working it just like I did with the light flesh clay. Also, a good tip before I forget, whilst I am working with clay, usually I would put the mould in the clay in the fridge. This would just harden it up for a little while and make it easier to work with later on, especially when you're trying to put clothes on it, all of the little accessories and things, so you don't make dents inside the clay, because obviously in your hands it will soften up and usually become a little bit, not melty, but just a lot softer, and you'll struggle to get the shape back that you had from the mould in the first place. The lilac clay that I'm now working with, I am flattening it down to make the clothes for the baby. So I'm sort of just pinching it at the sides, making it a lot flatter because I don't actually have a rolling pin. And any other thing that I use to roll this clay out gets stuck to it. So next I'm going to be using the white Fimo clay, and this is going to be making the wings and the little unicorn horn. So this baby is actually going to be a unicorn fairy baby because for some reason they're very popular at the moment. And I've just taken a scalpel and cutting the white clay down to the amount that I actually need, which isn't too much. And now I'm just making the wings. This process actually did take me a little while because I had to get the wings the exact same, or at least very similar, and when you're making two things that have to look exactly the same, it's very difficult. So what I did was flatten out 2 equal sizes of clay and then pinch the ends. This made like the top of the wing, and then I sort of like pinched them in the middle a tiny bit just to give them like more of a like pear shape or a teardrop shape, and more of a little tiny wing shape. as you can see, I'm just comparing them to see if they do look the same or very similar. So now I'm just making the really tiny unicorn horn. This did not need much clay at all, as the baby is actually palm size, so you can imagine how big this needed to be. And now we're ready to pop the baby out of the mold. This is always the exciting part, to see if it is actually molded into shape well or not. So it's quite temperamental sometimes, obviously depending how you put it in. But luckily we had a pretty good shape and only a few minor setbacks from where it connected inside the mold, but they're easily taken out by this tool here. So this is actually a nail tool. I don't actually know what it does for nails, but it works really well on my clay. So as you can see, I'm just taking out the lines that shouldn't be there. To be fair, it doesn't really make much of a difference, as the purple clay is actually going to go over the top of these lines, but I like to sort of smooth it out in the beginning and make it look neat. So now I'm just taking my scalpel and cutting off how much clay I actually do need to make the undergarments of the baby. So with this process, I usually cut out probably like a thumb size. That's all flattened out, and I place it like near the baby's undergarment area and sort of place it around and see if it fits on there. And if it doesn't, then I add more clay, and if it's too big, then I take it off. But a thumb size is always a good sort of size to start with. And then as you can see, I had a little bit too much and I just took it off with the scalpel. I'm now just pressing down the undergarment skirt area with the little nail tool and adding on a piece of clay where it didn't quite match up. So here I am actually making the trim of the undergarments, and by doing this I like make a long sausage shape and then sort of squiggle it together like I'm doing in here. So the first ever time I actually made this shape for the undergarments, I went through trial and error of seeing what worked best, and I could never get the shape right, and it was taking so long. And then one day I made this shape and I flattened it and I was like, oh my goodness, that's exactly what I'm looking for. So, you know, with the clay, you literally, it is trial and error and seeing what works best for you. And here I'm just, you know, I've flattened it all out, I've cut off the excess that I don't need, and now I'm seeing if it fits onto the undergarments. And luckily it is pretty much a perfect fit, so I've now placed it on there and pretty much stuck it down. Obviously I don't need glue or anything to stick it down, but sort of once it's down, it's quite hard to sort of take off. You can take it off, but it sort of breaks up the clay a little bit, so it is quite difficult. The trim, which is actually like a little skirt, I am now just moulding it into shape that I want it to go into the oven in. The reason that I am flicking it up like that is because I want it to look like more 3D than it actually is, so it gives it a little bit of movement and character. And then I'm just taking my nail tool and giving the petals of the skirt a nice texture. Next up, I'm making the baby's headband. So I'm taking like a sausage shape of clay and flattening it to place on the baby's head. Here you can see that I've actually got a little bit too much, so I'm just taking the scalpel to cut off the excess. Once that's all cut down to size, I started making the flowers for the flower crown. With this, I take another sausage of clay and flatten it just like the others. But the next thing I do is roll it up to create a small flower. This part is always a little bit fiddly. Once each flower is made, I pop them right onto the headband, and then that gives me an indication of how many more I need to make. Usually it's around 4 or 5 depending how big the flowers are. On this one they were actually made quite small, so I think I only managed to put 5 on there, plus the little unicorn horn. So unfortunately, one of my cameras decided to die and the other one decided that I didn't have any memory left. So I had to finish the baby, which I only really had to put the horn on and the wings, and it was complete. So you didn't really miss out on too much. But here is the finished product, and I will be shipping it out to its new home very soon. Thank you so much for sticking with me throughout this whole video. I really enjoyed making this video for you, and I hope you learned something and try it out for yourself because it is really fun. So hopefully I'll see you in a new video. Have a good morning, good evening, or good afternoon, depending where you are. Bye!